The RV market across America tanked over the last 3 years. The prices are down 25%, the sales went down by half, and this is something that's leaving a lot of RV owners in the lurch, and it's a sign of the recession that's happening in the background in the US economy. The last time we saw an RV crash like this was in 2007, 2008, right before Lehman Brothers and the Great Financial Crisis. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you what's going on in the RV market right now and why it matters for the overall economy. And let's start with some basic facts. 11 million American households own an RV, and during the pandemic, there was a massive boom in the number of people buying RVs. RV sales went up to 600,000 units in 2021 and have since collapsed by around 50%. Now, a lot of people bought RVs during the pandemic because there was a lockdown, right? You couldn't really go anywhere, and then we had remote work. So lots of people adopted the van life mentality and bought a towable or motorized RV and went around America. And some of these RVs here, everyone, they cost as much as $100,000 for certain high-end towable RVs, which are called fifth wheels. If you go on the Camping World website, you can see price points as high as $100,000 for these towable, down to as low as around $25,000. All right, folks, let's see if we can go into one of these bigger ones, one of these nicer ones. All right, here we go. I mean, this definitely has a smell to it. I don't know if new RV smell is a thing, but I definitely smell something in here that's akin to new car smell, but is not like new car smell. You can see we entered here in the bedroom, here. Immediately go to the bathroom, kind of just like a floating toilet, shower, sink, and then here is the living area. This is pretty nice, pretty spacious. Actually, there's bunk beds there. So you could sleep probably three people here, 4 people if it's a couple and 2 kids. Maybe a good family vacation. Looks like someone left their coffee in here. You guys can let me know what you think. Would you buy a towable RV like this? How much would you pay for a towable RV like this? Do you own an RV? Let me know in the comment section below. And what a lot of people do when they buy RVs is they finance them with debt. Often they'll only put around 15% down, and your monthly payment can range anywhere from around $400 a month up to $2,000 a month, depending on the price you pay and the interest rate you lock in. Right now, the RV interest rates are around 8%, which is contributing to the big downturn in sales. So if you look at this graph in RV sales, I want you to pay attention to 2 different points. One is the last 3 years since the pandemic, and the other is the mid-2000s into the Great Financial Crash. In both cases, we had around a 50% decline in RV sales, and the value of these RVs, everyone, have gone down about 20 to 25%. On used prices. If you look at the Black Book used RV index, it's down 25% from peak. It's still up from where it was before the pandemic, however, the values continue to drop. For instance, you can see the stock price of Winnebago Industries, who's the biggest RV manufacturer in America. Their stock price boomed during the pandemic, but is now down about 52% over the last year, indicating just how big this RV downturn has gotten. And Winnebago Industries, they just launched their earnings report for the end of 2024. They're showing that sales are down 50 to 60% over the last 3 or 4 years. It's a bloodbath for these RV manufacturers, and it's broadly similar to what's happening in a lot of the pandemic boom industries, whether we're talking about RVs or even housing. In the housing market, we had a boom in demand in 2020 and 2021 and a collapse in sales. And the demand in housing is still really, really low because a lot of the people who were going to buy a house or who were going to buy an RV bought it in 2020, 2021, 2022, and thus they're not buying it now in 2024 and 2025. Another interesting company that reflects this reality of the pandemic boom and bust is Polaris. Polaris makes sport utility vehicles, they make 4-wheelers, they kind of make those weird cars you see people driving around cities like Miami that kind of look like race cars with no doors. Well, Polaris's stock price is down 60% over the last year to year and a half because people are no longer buying these sport utility vehicles. They reported their sales were down 27% year over year at the end of 2024. And the ultimate thing we're seeing in this economy right now is that things that are discretionary are getting hit hard, right? If you don't have to own it, if it's not necessary for you to survive and to live and to eat and to put a roof over your head, people aren't buying it, right? And that's after 2+ years of inflation. People just don't have the money to buy things like RVs and sport utility vehicles or even houses anymore. And so the demand is just really low for these hard assets all across the economy. And I think it's a leading indicator of where the economy is heading overall. You know, if the production of sport utility vehicles tanks due to low demand, what's that going to do to economic growth? If the demand for housing tanks, what's that going to do to economic growth? And I think we're seeing that reality start to play out in the economy now. In 2025, there's a slowdown starting to take place, and the downturn that you're seeing in these sectors that occurred over the last 2 years was a leading indicator of that downturn. But let's talk for a second about why you would actually buy an RV. And again, we're looking at towable RVs on this lot right now. I spoke to the sales representative here at Camping World. He said that they only have 2 motorized RVs on the lot. Everything else is towable. So it actually looks like that is someone's RV that they parked here, but that's what a motorized RV is. That's what a towable RV is. And about 90% of sales are towable RVs. 10% of sales are motorized RVs. And when I look at a motorized RV, I immediately think of like a tour bus that a band is going on. But the vast majority of people end up buying these towable RVs, which are significantly cheaper. They're about 70% cheaper than the motorized. So a newer version of this, the motorized RV, would probably go for around $120,000. And you know, if you were to buy one of these towable RVs, which again, this is called a fifth wheel, because you could put it to the back of your pickup truck, and it acts basically as a fifth wheel. You know, you would buy this if you live a life where you drive around America and you go to vacation and you go to RV parks and maybe you're retired. You would buy this and hitch it to the back of your truck and go around the US. Additionally, some people buy some of these RVs and they actually live in them full time. With housing being so expensive, buying an RV and putting it on a plot of land is actually one of the cheaper ways you could live. So more and more people are also doing that. Roughly 1 million Americans live in their RV full time. And again, the price ranges on these are anywhere from like 25 to 100,000. And I was playing around with the payment calculator on the Camping World website, and the payment calculator automatically assumes a 20-year loan, which apparently isn't very common. More common is like a 10-year loan. And so if you were to buy one of these towables for around $50,000 on a 10-year loan, your monthly payment would be around $500, $600 a month. And so a lot of retired people with money in the stock market, excess savings, maybe they're still getting dividends from their portfolio. Many of them can afford to pay $600 a month for something like this, which is why I think in the long run, RV sales are probably going to do pretty well after this downturn plays out. I think demographics in America are shifting to a population base that's more favorable to RVs. Why don't we actually just peek our head in one of these RVs right now so you can get a sense of what we got. All right, how do I do this? Folks, this is my first time ever going into a towable RV, so forgive me. So you can see the stats right here. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what a lot of this stuff means. I'm from New York originally. In New York, RVs aren't really a thing. It's much more a thing in the South, but here you can see we're in the towable. It's kind of interesting, definitely close quarters in here. I'm not sure how this makes sense. Why is the kitchen island basically flush against the banquette in the kitchen and the kitchen table? I don't know. How do you move through here? You can see back there are the sleeping quarters. And yeah, this is how a lot of people live in the US on a part-time basis, and some even on a full-time basis. You can see you got a whole bunch of buttons right here. I think the biggest thing for me here on these RVs is parking. Where do you park it? Like, I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. No space to park this where I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. So I guess you would have to rent a space, or you would just already have to live in an area where there's ample space in your driveway to park the RV. I know one thing you see, especially down in Florida, is lots of people with RVs parked in front of their house or in their driveway. You also see that in states like Nevada. Like when I went to Las Vegas, I saw RVs all over the place. And it's definitely culturally more a thing like in the South and Mountain West. Like, I'm from New York originally, and I really don't know anything about RVs. I just think it's an interesting story to report on the economy, and I'm enjoying learning about this. You guys can let me know in the comment section below if you own an RV or are looking to buy one and how much you would pay for one. So that RV I went in, I think it's around $40,000, $50,000. Some of the RVs up here are more closer to 100 that I'm going to show you in a second. But I think it's also interesting, I'm going to relate this RV bubble and downturn to another asset that's not even remotely similar, but is interesting, is Rolex watches. Now you might say, Nick, how is a Rolex watch similar to an RV? Well, I'll tell you, the value of both of them exploded during the pandemic. Rolex watches and RVs, they surged in value at the same time because this period in 2020 and 2021 where everyone was locked down, the government printed all types of money, and that money that was printed, $5 trillion, found its way into different assets, whether it be a towable RV or it be a nice watch. Interestingly, the prices for both Rolex watches and RVs have gone down by about the same amount over the last 2 years, anywhere from 25 to 30%. And we're just seeing all of these different assets that boomed during the pandemic, they are correcting in value. And the prices of these RVs on the used market have gone down so much that a lot of people are now posting horror stories about buying an RV during the pandemic and not being able to sell it. If you go on Reddit in the RV forum, you'll just see left and right, people are saying, I bought my RV, it's underwater in value, I have to refinance at a higher interest rate, what do I do? And the answer, sadly, for some people is that they have to take a loss on their RV. They actually have to sell it at a loss, and you're gonna have to sell it and come in with cash to cover the difference. Now, this is one of the nicer models that the salesperson here pointed me out to. This is a big, big fifth wheel RV. You can see it's basically almost the size of a full mobile home. This apparently costs around $105,000. Your monthly payment here, if you use a 10-year loan, 8%, put 15% down, you're talking around a $1,400 a month monthly payment. You know, in this economy in 2025, I don't know how many people are shelling out $1,400 a month for an RV like that. The salesperson did tell me that the demand is improving a bit so far in 2025. Apparently there's a little bit of a recovery in the buyer demand from where it was the last 2 years, but where it was the last 2 years was the lowest level on record almost in terms of RV sales. Now I have a crazy stat for you guys. The number of Americans that own an RV has gone up 62% over the last 24 years. So from 2000 to 2024, there's been 62% growth in RV ownership in America. And I think the main reason for that is demographics. So over the last 20 to 25 years, the American population has gotten older. And we have way more retirees, which means way more people who are of the age and of the lifestyle that they would buy an RV. And I think with the US population continuing to age into the future, the demand for RVs in the long run should grow. Like right now, the demand is down. The RV market's in a correction to go along with the rest of the economy, which is starting to slow. However, I think in the long run, probably there's going to be a decent amount of RV buyers given the aging of the US population and the housing affordability crisis. I think for some people who are fed up with paying crazy, crazy rents, you know, in cities across Florida, I'm in Alabama right now, it's more affordable in Alabama, but especially in Florida, where you got to pay like $2,700 a month to rent a one-bedroom apartment near Tampa, I think some people might look at the RV life and say, hey, it might be worthwhile. You can cut your costs by 1/3 and travel around the US. Might not be a bad idea if that's your personality. However, I think ultimately, folks, this is just another sign of the economic downturn we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. Like, some people like to say that there is no economic downturn, that nothing has gone down, but that's not true. The RV market is showing you just how certain sectors of this economy have gotten hit really, really hard. Sales down almost 50%, used prices down almost 25%. In what is the biggest downturn the RV market has seen since 2008. And we're seeing this downturn spread to other sectors like sport utility vehicles. We're also seeing it in the housing market. Home sales are at their lowest level in 14, 15 years. So I think we just had like this massive boom during the pandemic that was never going to be sustainable. And now in 2025, this might finally be the year where we see the chickens come home to roost across most sectors of the economy. We'll have to see, we'll have to track the data as it comes out. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. I come out with 2 videos a week, me traveling around the US, showing you what's going on in different cities, different housing markets, and leave a comment if you want to see more RV content.